Hi, everyone. I'm Abigail. This is James, and welcome to another Two Kids interview.
We are joined today by award-winning author Andrea Loney.
Some of the books Ms. Loney has written include Curve and Flow, Space Blues, No Voice Too Small,
Take a Picture of Me, James Vander Zee, BunnyBear.
She was also part of the anthology, The Anti-Racist Kitchen, that came out last week.
And she has written the Abby in Orbit series that has a third book, All Systems Woe, coming out on September 28th. Thank you so much for being with us today.
Woo, thank you for that intro. That was awesome.
James and I reviewed the book, The Anti-Racist Kitchen, last month on our sister channel, Two Kid Reviews. We enjoyed cooking together and talking about anti-racism. Why did you decide to be a part of the anthology?
There's a couple of reasons why I decided to be a part of it. First of all, I am not the best cook in the world, so the fact that someone wanted me to be in their cookbook made me so happy. I was just like, wow, really? Me? Okay. And then as I was thinking about it, I kept thinking about my relatives and my family, and I just thought it was a wonderful way for people to connect through food, doing just what you did, where you made the dishes and you tried the dishes. And I just thought that that was great. Nadia Hone is the editor, and she is a brilliant writer and teacher. And just, I'm so delighted I was able to work on a project with her and with the other people who are in the book. And also, it's a Canadian publisher, and I'd never worked with a Canadian publisher before. So there were a lot of firsts here.
There's more representation in books now than ever before.
You and your books are a part of that trend. Is that something that is important to you?
It is important to me, and I'll tell you why. When I was a little girl, like when I first learned how to read when I was about 3, there were very few books that had little kids on the cover who looked like me. Maybe like The Snowy Day, by Ezra Jack Keats, the little kid in the red hoodie and the snow and all that other stuff. And maybe like the little girl in the original corduroy books, Lisa, but there really weren't that many. And it kind of made me feel invisible. And I don't want other kids to feel that way. So that's part of why I do what I do. And I'm so excited to not only see people who look like me, but people who look like my friends, or people who live lives like my students. Like all the amazing, colorful world that I see all around me, I'm so excited to see more and more of it in books so that other people get to hear the great stories and see fun stuff and learn about food, different kinds of food.
One word that stuck out to both of us in the Anti-Racist Kitchen was allyship.
In the move for social justice, can you talk about the importance of allyship?
I think the most important thing for me when I think about allyship is the fact that we are all allies to each other, or we can be, and we all have different privileges, right? We all have different privileges, we all have different abilities, and if we can work together to help each other out like a team, everybody wins, as far as I'm concerned. And that's how it works in my classroom too. If this person needs help or that person doesn't quite have the same abilities as this person, since we're all in a team, we're going to work together to do that. And that's just my regular life. I have grown up in New York and Los Angeles, let's say. Those are the 2 places I've lived. So I've always lived in places where there are lots of people of lots of different cultures, races, ethnicities. And in my mind, that's just what the world is. So I get really excited when I see people like kind of like getting in there and helping each other out, because that's how ideally it was when I was young. That's how I wanted it to be most of the time.
Tell us a story about coming up with the wonderful book series Abby in Orbit.
Oh, yeah. Okay, so Abby in Orbit actually started out as an assignment from a publisher. They said, oh, we want to write a book about a little Black girl who lives on the International Space Station with her scientist parents, and she kind of has trouble paying attention. And I got really excited about that, partially because my nickname when I was a little kid was Space, or Space Case, because I was kind of always thinking about stuff and not always paying attention to everybody. And my mom was super smart. My mom was the VP of the intranet at Merrill Lynch in Manhattan. Like she had like really amazing job. She was always thinking these big things. And at the time that I got this assignment, it was pandemic. So I really didn't have a lot of other things I was working on. And my family was so far away because I live here in California. They live in New Jersey. And I didn't know when I was going to get to see them. So by writing that book about that little girl and her family all together in the International Space Station, it kind of helped me feel like I was bringing my real family together. And even though my mom was far away, I was writing this character who reminded me of my mom, and the dad reminded me of my dad. So I kind of got to be close to my family by writing about people who are kind of like them, even though it's set like 30 years in the future.
What is your process when putting a book together?
Do you decide the end before the middle?
Or do you put it together in order?
That's a really good question. I will tell you that I've written a lot of books and they all come together differently. Sometimes I sit down and I write the whole book from beginning to end, which is basically what happened with Double Bass Blues. I just sat down and wrote it one night, and that was pretty much what they published. And then there's other ones like the Curve and Flow one. I knew what I wanted to write about, but I really wasn't sure how to write it. And I kept coming at it from all these different angles of trying to figure out the story. And then eventually I said, okay, I have to turn this into my class. I have to come up with something. And then I just wrote what I wrote out. And then we worked on it from that point. And then with the Abby and Orbit books, I don't start any of those books until I'm really clear on what is the science that we're going to talk about in the book and what is the emotional situation. Like, is it about Abby and her friends? Is it about Abby and her dad, or Abby and her mom, or Abby and how she wants to be a good big sister for her little brother, even though he's kind of annoying sometimes? All of that I use to put together to make, okay, this is probably what the story is going to be about. And then I sit and I figure out all the different parts of the story that I can. And once I have that all set up and I've done all my research, then I find some place to hide and I just type really fast for a few days. And after about a week, I have the first draft of the book. And then after a little bit more time, I have the second draft, and then I send it to my editor, and the editor makes some changes and I rewrite it. But that's basically how I do those books. So they're all kind of different.
After you finish your first draft, how much do you have to revise the book?
Again, it all depends on the book. So let me see. Take a Picture of Me, James Vandersea was the very first book that I had published. And the first draft that I wrote was so boring because it's about a photographer who lived in Harlem about 100 years ago, right? And I wanted it to be fun and exciting, but it just came out kind of like boring, like a Wikipedia entry or something. So I ended up having to rewrite that whole thing. And that made it better. And then it won the Lee and Low New Voices Award. And I had my first editor and I'm all excited. And she said, okay, I just have a few changes. And she gave me this manuscript and it was all red lines of everything that she wanted to change. Now, here's the funny thing. I know that sounds kind of scary. I'm like, if I was in school and a teacher did that, like, oh my gosh, I got an F, or oh my gosh, I have to do this all over again. But I was working with a really amazing editor, and the little changes that she suggested made the story was like here when I got it to them, but it was like up here by the time I put in her changes. So I was really excited to work with somebody who was that skilled at taking the words that I had and making them even better. And that's kind of how things work with revisions anyway. You know, it's like you don't grab a bunch of Play-Doh and then put it down and you have a horse, right? You have to like take the Play-Doh and do this and do that. And then eventually you have the horse. For me, it's the same thing with writing. I start with something and we work at it until finally it's ready to go.
Rejection is part of most writers' stories. Can you tell us about that part of your journey?
Okay, so the first time I decided I was going to write children's books was in 2003, a long time ago. So my nephew was 3 years old and I wanted to write a book for him because I just thought he was great, because he is great. But in any case, I wrote some stories, I sent them to publishers, and I got 6 no's. No. And I thought, oh my goodness, I shouldn't be doing this. They must not want me to do this if they keep saying no. This is terrible. So I gave up for a while and I watched other people get published and I felt jealous of them. And then in 2011, I decided, or 2012, I decided, no, I'm going to do this. And I don't care if anybody says no to me. I'm just going to keep writing. And if they say no, I'm going to keep writing. And if they say no, and here's why, I'm going to listen to why they said why. And if it's something that I can change, I'll change it. And if it's something that I can't change or doesn't need to be changed, I'll keep going. And what ended up happening is the James Van Der Zee book was the first one that got published. And it got published the first place that I sent it, even though that place gave me a no the year before in another manuscript. BunnyBear was the second manuscript that I had published. That book got 24 no's. 24 different editors said no to it until one editor said yes. And then the same thing with Double Bass Blues. Double Bass Blues got about 20 different people saying no until one editor said yes. And then it won a big award called the Caldecott Honor, which is kind of like the Oscars of children's books. So no to me is like the path to every place I want to go is going over no, 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 until I get to yes. And sometimes it's a short path, and sometimes it's a long path, and sometimes it goes in all these different directions. But eventually, I keep going until somebody says yes.
We have interviewed a number of authors who have had books banned.
That means in those places, kids don't have the same access to books that we have and may not be able to see themselves represented in books.
Can you give us your thoughts on this?
I have a lot of thoughts and a lot of feelings and a lot of opinions about that for a lot of reasons. At the beginning of this interview, I told you how much it meant to me to be able to see that there are books with kids who look like me or who look like my friends or who look like my students on these books, right? Well, bans mean the opposite of that. Bans are erasing people, and it erases all different kinds of people. And it doesn't mean that the people don't exist. It means that they don't get to see themselves. And even as a teacher, I know that when you can see something representing you, it makes it easier for you to learn, right? So BunnyBear is a banned book in several different, I think in the entire state of Iowa, somehow it's banned. And I know, it's so ridiculous. And I have a lot of strong feelings about that, but I also know that that book has helped a lot of people and kind of healed some people's hearts where they felt like they were misunderstood and are unloved. And that book made them feel loved and made them feel understood and make them feel connected. And to me, that's more important than the people who just want to get rid of the things that they don't understand or that they're afraid of or that they don't agree with. Because I think everybody deserves love personally.
We agree. The Big Apple Circus. What were you doing there? And I'm hoping you've got a great story for your time there that you can share with us.
Okay. So I joined the Big Apple Circus because I went to New York University. That's where I went to college and I studied writing there. And I got my bachelor's degree, which takes like 4 years to get, and my master's degree, which might take like 3 years to get. I got them both in 5 years. And I just took as many classes as I could. I was always, always, always in class or working, doing at different companies around New York. And when I graduated, nobody wanted to hire me because I was 22 years old and I had a degree and I wanted to be a professor. And they're like, you just got out of school. You don't have experience with anything else but school. And I was really mad. And I said, I'll show you. I'm going to get some life experience. And I found out that the circus was hiring. So I went to an interview at the circus. I wore all the wrong clothes. I dressed like I was going to an office in Manhattan, and there's like horses and gravel everywhere. Like my heels were getting stuck in the gravel, and it felt like a bad idea. But I went in there, and when I went to the interview, it turns out that the general manager, my boss, he loved the theater. I had one part of my degree was in playwriting, writing for the theater. And I had studied the history of the circus before I applied for the job. He loved history. So we had a 2-hour conversation where we talked about everything we loved about the history of the circus and different kinds of circus performers. And it was great. I had such a wonderful time. and they wanted me to work in the office, and I wanted to be a crew person. I want to have like a sledgehammer and like be hammering things and raising the tent and like working with the elephants. Like I wanted to do all of that. And they're like, no, you don't. And I was like, no, really, I do. And they said, okay, we're going to hire you and you're going to travel with us for a month. So I had to leave for a month, and I didn't even know any of these people. You had to live with them. So I had to hop in somebody's truck and go with them. And they said you could set up the tent one night, and if you really want to do it, we'll let you be a crew person. But if not, please come back to the office. So at the end of the first show that I was on, where they were tearing down the tent, where they literally lift the floorboards off the floor and stack them up and everything, I split this nail all the way down here, and I started to cry. And this big dude named Jimbo like scooped me up in his arms and got on his radio, and they brought me to the office and they put me in my chair and they said, and here's your computer and here's your this and here's your that. And then that was it. I was the office girl. I had like my nails done all the time and wore my little dresses, and it was great. We traveled up and down the eastern seaboard of Vermont, all the way, I think up from Vermont all the way down to South Carolina. I met people from all over the world. A lot of people who were hired around the time that I was hired were there between college and medical school, or college and law school. So people went there just to get life experience. And to this day, I am still friends with people who I met in the circus, and I'm in contact with them pretty much every day.
What writer has had the most influence on you?
Oh, that's a good question. There's so many of them. I want to say Jacqueline Woodson. And Jacqueline Woodson has written these wonderful, beautiful, poetic picture books and middle grade books. She wrote this book called Brown Girl Dreaming. And when I read it, I felt like she was writing about me. And she wrote the kind of things that I didn't even think that I would be able to write. So I saw that she did it. And because I saw her do it, I felt like I could do it too. And then I did it. So she was very influential and very inspiring to me.
What advice do you have for young people who want to write?
My biggest advice for anybody who wants to write is 3 things. The first thing is, if you don't believe that you can do it, just ignore that thought for a while. Come back to that thought after you've done it. Second thing is, read as much as you can and write down why you like or don't like what you're reading, because that's the best way to learn. And then the third one is just to write. And if you have a problem, write your way out of that problem. Just keep writing.
We are super excited for the new Abby and Orbit books. We also know there is a 4th one coming, Mission Moon, in April.
Yeah.
And you have a book for little kids, Chicken Soup for the soul babies, coming in February.
Can you tell us about any other project you are working on now?
One of the weird things about the book writing industry is you find out that someone buys your book and they're going to publish it, but you're not allowed to tell anybody. Sometimes for over a year, you're not allowed to tell anybody until the publisher writes up this whole note and posts it someplace, and you're supposed to be very quiet until then. So I have some stuff that I'm very excited about, but I can't talk about it yet.
Finally, it's time for Turbo 10.
10 rapid fire questions. Are you ready?
Wait, hold on. Let me. Okay, here we go.
Number 1, what is your favorite phrase to use?
It's all good.
Number 2, what is one subject you'd love to learn more about?
Quantum mechanics.
Number 3, what is your go-to snack food?
My go-to snack food is ginger snaps.
Number 4, what was your favorite book growing up?
My favorite book growing up was The Snowy Day.
Number 5, if you could teleport somewhere right now, where would you go?
If I could teleport right now, I would be with my sister and her kids, and we would be playing video games.
Number 6, if you could have one superpower, what would it be?
Time travel.
Number 7. What was your favorite cartoon as a kid?
Ooh, that's a good one. As a kid, my favorite cartoon was Bugs Bunny.
Number 8. What is your favorite rainy day activity?
Well, I live in Los Angeles, so it rains like maybe like 20, 30 days in the whole year. We really don't have rain out here. So when it does rain, I like to take pictures of the rain because it happens so seldom and then send it to other people who are also doing this. We're really ridiculous when it happens. Mostly when it rains, I go outside and I try to remember everything I left out there and bring it all back in.
Number 9. If you could have any 3 dinner guests, who would they be?
Ooh, 3 dinner guests. Okay, so my first dinner guest would be oh, this is so hard to decide. Stevie Wonder. And my second guest would be John Cena because he seems really nice. And my third dinner guest would be Oprah.
Number 10. What is the best piece of advice you were ever given?
The best piece of advice is I got this from my dad. Whenever something goes wrong, my father always says, "This too shall pass." So if you're having a bad time, if you wait long enough, it's going to go away. And if you're having a good time, you want to enjoy it for as long as you can because everything changes.
You were awesome, and thank you so much for doing that.
And thank you so much for spending this time with us.
We can't wait to read your future books.
Thank you. You are amazing interviewers. I love how you do that whole interplay thing. This is great. I'm really excited. I'm going to tell my students about you.